Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. Boy, you want to talk about adventures of a lifetime. The gentleman that we're going to spend our hour with today has done just that. His name is John Verrico. He is a public speaker. He is a radio guy. He is a military veteran, and I want to thank you very much for your service, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And you've been you were in the Navy, and you were on ships, and you were the public relations officer, and you've done a lot of different things with media. Had a podcast for military and for government people. I guess there are a few of them floating around, aren't there?
Oh, yeah, quite a few. There's a lot of government agencies that are trying to do their own podcasts. And in my former position with the Department of Homeland Security, we started the Technologically Speaking podcast, which was focused on the research and development folks that were doing the behind-the-scenes work to help the mission of police and firefighters and emergency responders.
Right. Now, your radio career, as I recall, actually started at a very young age when you went into the military, and you went into the Navy, and you went into the public. I didn't know that there was this. Is there actually a public relations training department in the Navy?
Absolutely. So this was interesting. Back in that era, I actually started as a freelance journalist while I was going to college and that kind of stuff, and really trying to find myself. But I was very unreliable. I was a really good writer, and I knew how to pick out the news elements, and I knew how to tell a good story. But I just couldn't get up in the morning, and so I was always late. I was always late to places, and so I'd show up at the site of a news event, and it was already history. It was no longer news. So. I actually, my kid brother convinced me to join the military and get some discipline in my life, and so I looked at the Army and the Marine Corps for about 8 seconds and said, no, I'm not going to go crawling in the mud and dodging bullets, and I've got a fear of heights, so the Air Force was out. So. And I said, well, I do know how to swim. And so, and everybody loves a sailor. So I'm going to go ahead and join the Navy. And the Navy had a program called the Navy Journalist. And I figured, okay, when you're on a base overseas or on a ship, somebody's got to write a base newspaper or a ship newspaper or something like that. And I thought that's what I was going to be doing. So I joined the Navy, signed up as a Navy journalist. Met the requirements, went to their school. And I'll tell you something, the military's public affairs school is probably the best in the world. It is the best in the world. I'll say that because other nations send their government public affairs people to our school. It is the Defense Information School. It's based out of Fort Meade, Maryland. But anyway, so I went to the school, went out into the fleet, and realized that a Navy journalist does not just a little ship newspaper, but we're also broadcast journalists. We are photographers, we are public affairs folks, we are spokespersons, and we are speechwriters, and all of those things. And so I reported aboard the ship, and I went, here we go, let's go do some stuff. And they said, okay, here's your studio. You've got 2 TV stations to run, 2 radio stations to run. Do all the programming and all the content. By the way, we need an evening newscast, shipboard newspaper, newsletters that go home to the families and the home community when the ship is out, is deployed. Ship's photographer, here's your camera. Your dark room is down the hall. You're going to handle all the media queries. You're going to put out press releases. You're going to be the speechwriter for the commanding officer. And when the ship pulls into port, you put on your community relations hat, and you'll run tours and coordinate, dignitary visits and things like that. And I was like, that's really cool.
Did they recognize that there were only 24 hours in a day?
Where's my staff? I was a staff of one doing all of this stuff. But I'll tell you, Kevin, it was the most rewarding time of my career. I learned so much because I was doing so many different things. And yes, I was a broadcast journalist. So I was doing radio shows and television, doing the television news. And it was funny because I said it was a staff of one. So I would set up the camera and then go sit in front of the camera. And I'd have these 35 millimeter slides programmed to kind of, pop in on the screen, for go along with certain news stories and stuff. And I had a chief petty officer that I worked for at the time, who was a wannabe broadcaster himself, Chief Push. And I know I'm going to give him the link to the show so that he can listen to it. He's still out there. And so, and we're still friends all these years later. So he and I would sometimes, he would sit with me and do the news broadcast, and I'd help him learn how to pronounce some of the words, Martina Navratilova and L'Aquilenza and, all those kind of fun things. And we would do radio shows together. So he loved oldies shows. So we had the Chief Push Time Machine, and we'd have these his collection of music on cassette tapes, and I had stuff on reel-to-reel tapes, and we would take those things and combine them and put together a show. So we did his show. We had the Rock the Boat show, which was a rock show. We had a country time show, and we had a disco show.
Oh, geez.
And I'd produce all these shows, and we would air them on board the ship to provide entertainment for the crew when we were out at sea. And then I would pull, news off the AP and UPI Newswire and put together news broadcasts and news announcements throughout the day as well.
Now, running all of that all by yourself, how many hours a day would you be? Now, first of all, it's great training, and I'm sure you really enjoyed it, but how many hours a day were you working?
12, 14, 16.
Whatever. It's one of those jobs where whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Yeah.
You can't have dead air.
Because when I wasn't on the air, I mean, we had stuff, we'd produce the shows and then run them. The radio stuff would just run all day, and I'd have to go in and change tapes every once in a while. But that was pretty much self-sustaining. The TV broadcasts were only in the evenings because people were working during the day, so nobody was watching television. Right. So the TV wouldn't start until after evening chow, and then it would go till taps, which is 10 o'clock. And so it'd
be like, what time does everybody eat on a boat?
Usually the last dinner is done around 6. So it was 4 hours of television every night.
Well, and they had nothing else to do, so they might as well watch TV.
And if we were out at sea, and there wasn't an actual operation going on, then we might start TV as early as 4 o'clock.
Now, did you become famous on board the boat, and everybody was like, "Hey, there comes John," and stuff like that?
Well, I don't know if famous is the word, but everybody knew who I was. But it's funny, you get favors, right? All of a sudden, right? Because the laundry guys would iron my uniforms for me.
Oh, that was nice of them.
Yeah, because if they wanted to see Road Warrior for the 800th time, I would just give them the movie and they can run it on the projector for themselves, or whatever it was. And so, I made friends with the captain's cook. I don't want to get him in trouble and let anybody out there know, but whatever the captain ate, I got to eat.
So, what was you? Now you were doing public relations for the commander. So what was it like putting a speech together for him? Was that something that you had to work a lot together with him to get his personality and how he would sound and what he would do?
At the beginning, mostly I just had to kind of figure out, all right, what is it that you want to say, and listen to the way he was relating it. And then I would just kind of throw it together. Now, then it came times where, all right, Captain, this is what I think you need to say because this is what's going on. So he didn't have too many. I mean, the ship was always out at sea, so we didn't do that many. But there was a lot of internal stuff,
Yeah.
when he had to do an announcement about, some activity the ship was going to have to be doing, or we're going to miss this Liberty call port or whatever. I would help him to put something into a way that was, less disturbing to the crew, that kind of stuff.
See, that all I know about military life on a boat is what I see in movies, and these captains will get on the microphone and they will speak and verbatim of what they're talking about, and it'll sound great. But that's really not the case. They have somebody who helps them sound great.
Sometimes it depends on the individual. There's a lot of commanding officers that don't use their person as a script writer or speech writer. For one of my commanding officers, I helped him with almost everything. Another one barely ever tasked me with stuff. And when I was at the next command, the admiral wanted me to write every single speech. The next command, he had some lieutenant writing all of his speeches, but I got to proofread it. And then another one just went and did whatever the heck he wanted to. So it just depends on the individual and how confident they are and how comfortable they are with public speaking or with anything like that. And so that is really the crux of what my career is helping people to communicate. No matter what the role was and no matter what level they were, I was helping people tell their story. So, the engineer from the boiler room, was able to talk to a local newspaper about, what it's like doing the work there. And so, he became kind of famous in his hometown because, he got to tell his story. There are so many people out there doing so many interesting things, not only in the Navy, but in government. And that's where I spent my career, is helping to tell those stories about the government's work, not the politics of government, but the actual work of government, the things that they do to serve the citizenry.
I gotta ask you, we don't go into politics, we don't go into that kind of stuff, but you've been intimately involved with government for virtually your whole career.
42 years.
Huh?
42 years.
That's a career. That's a career. So tell me, and we'll put this to bed. Is there a dark, insidious side to government that nobody knows about, that is horrible and awful? Or I think that there are too many people involved. There's absolutely no way that you could keep, what do they call it? There's a cabal, or this group of people that are running the country, and it seems to me like there are way too many people involved that somebody would talk about something somewhere. But that's just me. Is there such a thing?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Okay.
No, but in all seriousness, Kevin, there are folks, if you have not really worked in government, then you don't really understand the machine. And so there are 99.9% of the government is not political in nature. It is out there actually doing real work. We're running your state parks and, taking care of the environment and taking care of roads. And there's there is nothing you can do in your life that is not impacted or supported by some element of some level of government, whether it's the county government, the local government, federal, state, some element, some government entity is involved in everything that you do in some fashion. They're maintaining the roads so that you can get to your job, right? They're maintaining the airwaves so that people can hear what it is that you're saying. They're watching the broadcast spectrums to make sure that this other organization isn't tapping into your radio signal on your time. So all of this stuff is maintained by people working very hard in the government. And so many folks just they want to put government down. Their only exposure to the government is when they go to the airport and they see TSA, right? They go, oh, that's the damn government getting in the way, right? or they go to DMV to get their driver's licenses renewed or their car registration, and there's maybe some one disgruntled person there that just ruins the whole environment or the atmosphere. Um, they see maybe some road crews that held up they were stuck in traffic for hours because of some construction site going on the roads. And then when they get there, they happen to see the people are on their brakes. So like, there they are, government lazy workers are not doing a thing. And there's my tax dollars. And they held me up for 3 hours. So you don't really see what's going on in the background. And so, yeah, the government gets a bad rap because of that. You say government, people go, oh, and they think the politics, but really, what it is an enormous working machine, and there are many thousands of people that are out there doing really, really important work, and that's the part of government that I supported through my past 42 years. Both, well, not I was going to say both, but actually was in the military. I worked for state government in Maryland and also for the federal government. So in that whole period of time.
It always gets me when people say, I pay too much taxes. I'm a business owner and stuff, and I don't need the government for anything. It's like, okay, how
are your lights on?
Yeah, are your lights on? Do you have roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads, but do you have roads to do stuff? Do you have a fire department of your own in case your business catches on fire?
Yeah. So many people don't realize all of that stuff, and you're right. We all complain about how much taxes we have to pay. And I admit I complain about how much taxes I have to pay too. But I won't even go into the the whole side of who pays taxes and who gets away with not paying taxes.
That's a long discussion that
and
I'm hopeful
and that is not for positive talk radio. That is
not, no.
That is for smack them in the head talk radio.
I'm hopeful that one of these days it will all rectify itself, but it's going to take a long time. So, but anyway, we're talking with John Verrico. He is one of my favorite people on the planet. He's been a broadcaster for like ever, and he's doing public relations, and he has got to see a lot of stuff. He's also a public speaker, and he's a keynote speaker. And you can go to John Verrico, that's VERRICO.com. You can find out all about him and all the things that he does and to this day. And so, and he's got some people that say some really complimentary things to you about you on your website. How much did all that cost?
Paying those people to send in those those nice remarks and those compliments. I tell you, I've been, like I said, throughout my day job career, I was training people to communicate. And so that was the part of what I was doing that I enjoyed the most. Yeah. When I helped somebody to tell their story, or when I helped somebody to overcome a challenge, that was my reward. And that is still where my reward comes from. So I expanded out over the years, over the past 20 some odd years. I started bringing this trainings outside of my government job. So I haven't been doing like media training, but more like interpersonal communication training, leadership training. That's because I realized that those skills are really intermeshed. If you can't communicate, you are not going to be a good leader. Yep. And so those are the kinds of things I've been trying to help people to do. Now, where this comes from, and Kevin, I think you know a little bit about my early background, but I was an undersized kid in school. I was picked on by bullies a lot. And when I got into the high school years, I know you were the big kid in school. I was the little guy. And so when I got into the workforce and I saw people treating each other like the bullies treated people, you see those bully bosses and, you do this because I said to do this and you do this way. I realized that didn't really keep a very motivated workforce. And I know from experience working with and for people of all kinds and different leadership styles, I know what skills they had that made me feel better about what I did, that made me want to work harder for them.
Right.
And so because of those kinds of things, those are the kinds of skills that I chose to emulate as I was coming up through leadership ranks. And those are the skills that I'm trying to teach others to do, right? And so what I've been doing is working with either groups or individuals to help them with their leadership and communication skills. And like I said, if there's one person in that room that gets that little glint in their eye that says, boy, he just hit home for me. That was an important message for me. I'm going to take that, and that turned on the light for me. That is my reward. I have become accustomed to those minor luxuries called food and shelter, so I have to charge for those services. But if
As
I was
well you
if I was
should.
if I was independently wealthy, I would probably do this stuff for free.
But at the same time, people value things that they pay for.
No,
If
that's true.
if it's free, a lot of people, oh, it's just free. What could he know?
That's so
But
true.
if it costs, like $50 or $100, it's like, well, he charges it. It must be good, and I'm going to go and learn a lot from it. And that's and I wanted to
Put a
ask
few
you.
more zeros on there, but anyway.
Well, yeah, but I wanted to ask you. There are a lot of people who look at you, and in some cases look at me and go, they've got the gift of gab. It just naturally comes to them. How do you teach somebody to have the gift of gab?
Not everybody has the gift of gab, but what they can do is overcome the nervousness that accompanies their that keeps them from being able to talk. Um, there's nothing wrong with being an introvert.
No.
Absolutely nothing wrong at all with being an introvert. That does not mean that you cannot present well. That does not mean that you cannot have a conversation when you need to have it. That does not mean that you don't communicate. But there's a different comfort level. And so what I do is work with people to help them to try to identify what's holding them back from being able to do a good presentation. Let's say they have to do a presentation at work and they're nervous as all get out. What are you nervous about? What's the fear coming from? What is the worst possible thing that can happen? And now let's backtrack from that. And then just learn to get more comfortable. And the other important thing is to understand that they matter. People want to hear what you have to say. I've met so many folks that said, I don't have anything to offer. I'm just at this level. I don't know why they want me to talk. These are all, high level people in this room, and they want me to present to them or whatever. You have something to offer, or they wouldn't have asked you to speak.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that kind of realization that what you have to say is important. And so now let's work on the mechanics of how to get those words out of your mouth and into their ears.
And if you teach somebody, so it's a skill, you can teach somebody to do it, and maybe they're never going to be Robin Williams, as an example, but they will be able to speak confidently and competently to a group of people that they are in front of.
You know what 90% of the fear comes from? It comes from being taken by surprise. People are afraid they're going to look foolish if somebody asks them a question, or they're going to challenge what they have to say. And so the main thing to do is to prepare for that. Duh, right? Have your defenses ready. If you know, okay, you're going to be talking about a certain topic, and people in the room might have an opinion about that topic. Understand what that opinion is. Understand what where they may have formed that from, and then be ready to counter it with the proper information. Really good example. Whenever like we were doing a press conference and you got a bunch of hostile reporters, they're looking right. They're looking to beat you up.
They're looking for a story.
They're looking for a hole in your story. They don't care what you have to say. They want to necessarily, they're looking for the hole in the story. They're looking for something that they can dig into. Now I'll tell you, not all reporters are like that. I've worked with, many, many thousands of reporters in 42 years. I couldn't even, I mean, thousands a year. So, how many does that add up to? And over all that time, I've only been intentionally misquoted 4 times. I've dealt with 4 hostile reporters and probably 100,000. So people's perception of the hostile reporter is really, very incorrect. But understand there are going to be some who are going to be out there who are investigative reporters or whatever that want to dig in and are looking for a mistake. Understand why you're nervous before doing an interview like that. We did a lot of these in the government and military, obviously for obvious reasons. But understand what those concerns are. Understand what they're looking for, and just make sure you got your stuff ready.
Yeah.
We had done, there was an outbreak of a microbe in the eastern shore of Maryland called Pfiesteria. And
I heard of that.
yeah, so Pfiesteria, it's a microbe. Well, it's Pfiesteria piscata specifically, but it's a microbe that is normally an algae eater. Okay. And it goes through life as an algae eater until it decides, I need a little nutrient. Like our bodies go, I need a little vitamin C. So what do? We drink orange juice, right?
Right.
So what this microbe does is, I need a little something else. So it changes its physical form and now becomes a flesh eater.
Oh, lovely.
And so it will emit, this is really weird, it emits a pheromone into the water. That pheromone causes fish to stress. When fish stress, they release a pheromone, which is the trigger chemical for this change in the microbe. And now the microbe can go from eating algae to eating fish. So we were having hundreds of thousands of fish dying and washing up on the shores of the eastern shore of Maryland. And it was freaking people out.
No doubt.
The commercial fishermen, when they were catching fish, maybe, fish that had not died, but then when they're catching fish, the fish had these like ulcerous lesions on them. Well, you can't sell a fish that looks like that, even though it's safe to eat. You certainly, who wants to buy a fish with a big, ulcering sore on the side of it? So it was impacting a lot of people. Well, then people were starting to get sick, but not from eating the fish, but mostly it was the commercial fishermen who were ingesting the microbe in the spray of the water coming off their boats.
Oh, man.
So all of this weird stuff was going on. This microbe, not only can it switch from an algae eater to a flesh eater, it actually has 24 different stages that it can shift into at any time. It is scientifically remarkable, but frightening as all get out.
Nobody wants to hear you say this is a remarkable little creature.
That's exactly it. And so what was happening was the scientists who were working for the Department of Environment were doing interviews about, what was happening with the fish kills. And instead of being concerned, I mean, they were concerned about the health issues or the potential health issues, but they were so fascinated by this new microbe that that's what they were focusing on. And like, this is a remarkable little microbe and this is what it does. And people were like, so the whole
end is near.
So the whole thing is understanding. So then it was like, well, did you create the darn thing in a lab or something? So the whole concept there is to understand the concerns of the people you're talking to. What do they know? What do they think they know? Where are they getting their old information from? And then how can you relate information in a way that they'll understand and that addresses their concerns? And whether it's a reporter or somebody in the community or whatever, that's really what it comes down to is having an open understanding of knowing who you're talking to and where they're coming from.
Well, now, John, you as being someone who stands up in front of people and talks a lot and are able to hold the attention of an audience. Did you have acting in your past? I recommend improvisational theater. That if you want to learn something about how to think on your feet and how to react a certain way in certain things. Improvisational theater is a great training ground.
It is
for
a
you to be able
fabulous
to
training ground. So early on in life, when I was that undersized youth in school,
you
I
had no
did not
choice.
do any of those things. I was an extrovert that was forced to be in an introvert's body. Because every time I brought attention to myself, I got beat up by the bully. So I didn't do theater or any of that stuff until later in life. After, you're going to laugh, after I learned how to disco dance.
You're right.
See, I did get you to laugh.
Yeah.
After I learned how to disco dance and got a little bit of confidence, then I was able to start, kind of stretching out a little bit further. And I did ultimately do some theater. And it was funny because I do not sing. I do not have a good singing voice,
Me neither.
but I kept getting involved in musical theater. I could dance. And so what happened, I was a friend of mine who was very good. He was a good actor and a singer and dancer and all that stuff. And he was really good looking. And he was one of those guys.
I
I
hate
hung
those.
around with him because the girls hung around with him, So
Exactly.
I
And
get the
you were
the
just
girls on
looking
the fringe.
exactly. Just some overflow. Send them my way, babe.
Yeah. He can only dance with one of them at a time, right? So there's always you want to dance with me in the interim, until he's free.
We'll just give you a number and then you dance with me
Yeah,
until
pretty
that
much.
number's called.
But anyway, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go do this audition on the way to going to the clubs tonight. So, come with me." And I said, I don't do that stuff. And he says, it'll be fine. He says, there'll be girls there. I'm like, oh, well, I'll go with you. So, so I fill out this, and so on the way I said, so what is this show? He says, it's Fiddler on the Roof. I said, so that's a musical. I love that show. It's a musical. I mean, what could I possibly contribute to something like that? And he goes, don't worry, just come on. So he gives me this, the sheet to fill out that says, what shows have you been in before? None, singing voice, none. Can you dance? Yeah, checked off. Yes, I can dance. So he turns in my sheet and a little while, and he's over doing the audition stuff. I'm sitting kind of in the back of the theater. And a little while later, this woman walks over and she says, are you John? I said, yeah. She goes, it says here, you can dance. Come with me. So we went out in the hall and she says, okay, let's see what you can do. Do this. And she moved her feet and I moved my feet. And she goes, okay, good. Now do this. And she moved her feet and I moved my feet. She goes, okay, great. You got it. I said, I got what? She goes, all the dancing roles. I have no men who can dance. So I was the lead. I was the fiddler. I was the lead Russian dancer, and I was the lead bottle dancer in the wedding scene and all that kind of stuff. And so I wound up doing stuff like that. And that's how I kind of started doing that. And then later in life, I was working at the Maryland Renaissance Festival.
Cool.
And got into that stuff. And most of that was just really just going into character on speaking kind of funny. And I was selling hats. And it was completely improvisational, whatever. And so with them, then I got into doing improv theater and dinner theater, extemporaneous theater, and enjoyed that so much. But that really helped me to learn to think on my feet. And then it came in very, very handy when it was time to do interviews and such like that. So long story to talk about really how, you can learn to think on your feet. And that's where people get scared the most. Like I started to say, they're worried about what's going to hit them. They can prepare their notes and they're all ready to give their, 15 minutes or whatever it is. But then it's that Q&A session that they're dreading so much. But you're right. Improvisational theater is a great way to train yourself to be able to think on your feet.
You will appreciate this story because I too was in Fiddler on the Roof.
Aha! Were you Tevye?
No, I wasn't good enough to be Tevye, but I was Lazar Wolf, the butcher.
Oh, excellent.
Red Marca. And so And this is one of the things you learn is that now in those days you had a curtain and then there was a rope that you would open the curtain. Somebody was there with a rope, and I was Lazar Wolf, and I was downstage, stage middle, and the bartender was supposed to be off to the side over here, Reb Morka, and Reb Morka was going to give me a bowl of your best brandy. And so the assistant director, who had a wicked sense of humor, decides he goes over to open the seat. He looks and says, "Is everybody ready?" And I look over, and Reb Morka is not there. And I said, Joe, Reb Morka, he's not there. Don't open the curtain. He gave me this little crap-eaten grin and opened the curtain. And so my first line, I'm supposed to turn to my right and say, Reb Morka, a bottle of your best brandy. And of course, there was nobody there. And so I just yelled out Reb Morka as loud as I could. And you could hear, because the green room was in the back of the theater. Mm-hmm. And you had to come all the way up one of the rows on the outside, and you could hear him running from the back all the way to the front. But it was one of those things where, what do? You got to get through it somehow. And so it worked. But that was, and I got to sing to life.
Yes, L'chaim.
And
I love it.
and sing that thing, and it was a marvelous. But that
I sang that actually as part of the chorus.
You were part of the chorus, in that.
Because they said, well, you're not going to just dance; you got to sing, but you don't have any lead roles, thank God.
But, and the cool thing,
I did later on in life wind up with some lead singing, but I have to tell you a similar story that happened to me. I was working on it was a dinner theater show. And I was playing it was called Murder in the Park. And I was playing a park ranger, and I'm going to be kind of the investigator of this crime that is going to happen. But where the opening scene, the park manager and I are supposed to be out on stage, kind of welcoming the guests to this, award volunteer of the year ceremony. That was the kind of the premise for the gathering. It's the volunteer of the year award ceremony, and thank you all for coming, and kind of setting the stage for who the players are that they're going to meet throughout the course of the evening. So it's the opening piece. And I come out onto the stage, and there's no curtain. This is a dinner theater, so it's fairly open. And I come out onto the stage, and she's not there. And so I greeted everyone. We'll be right with you. And I went back and I said, where the hell is Dorothy? And they said, she's not here. I said, I know, she missed her spot. She's not here. She's not in the building. She has not arrived yet. I went, then why did you make me start the show? Just go out and fill. So I'm geared up to look like a park ranger. I've got a radio and all this gear on, right? And so, and they were real walkie-talkies, by the way. And so I go out and I start kind of just doing the welcoming and telling people about what's going on and making stuff up. And then finally, somebody, jumps out, and they're waving to me, and they're pointing to me to turn on my radio. So I turn on the radio, and Dorothy's in the back getting dressed and just starts explaining how she got lost coming to the event, which is in the park's facility, her own park. So we completely created a persona for her character on the spot that her was kind of like McClane in the early years of MASH.
Yes.
Kind of that inept commanding officer thing. So she was she was completely lost in her own brain, could not find the public facility, the event facility in her own park. And so I'm talking to her on the walkie-talkie, and I'm going, okay, so where are you now? What do you see? I parked in a parking lot. Okay, good. What do you see? Trees. Okay, turn around. What do you see now? I still see trees. Are they the same trees? Yes, they are. Okay, turn halfway around this time. Oh, what do you see now? There's a building. That's the one. And we literally just came up with this, and she's off stage, so we're not even able to cue each other. It was just completely wacky.
But that's how, if you're listening to this and you're a mom or a dad and you have got kids, put them into acting class, put them into improvisational drama, because it will give them the chops and the experience and the confidence to be able to stand up in front of somebody when you're not prepared for exactly what they're going to say. And as a public relations officer, you got that all the time, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it was always out of left field, tell me, Senator, are you still beating your wife, kind of thing. It's like those there's no way to answer those kinds of questions, but
No.
that's always the stuff that people fear. And I admit, in my early days I did too, and now it's just okay. If I don't know the answer, then it's okay to say I don't know the answer at this moment. We will get back to you.
You remember, of course, Jimmy Carter, and Rosalind just recently passed away. I'll
Yeah.
never forget watching a press conference with him the first time after he'd been elected, and he was standing up there, and somebody asked him a hard question, and he thought about it for a second, and then with his smile that he had, he said, "I don't know, but I'll find out." And
Yes.
and then the next time he did that, and he pulled it off. Because it's like nobody's expected to know everything. And if you do, if you're a politician and you've got an answer for everything, then half of it's made up anyway. So,
Well, yeah, and that's exactly it. I met Jimmy, by the way, and he was very nice when they were commissioning his the submarine that was named after him. He was a submariner in the Navy. And so they named the USS Jimmy Carter obviously after him. And so he came to the ceremony when we commissioned that, and I was leading the public affairs efforts for that commissioning ceremony. Very nice guy.
well, you should have you written a book, the biography of one John Verrico?
I have not written that book yet, but I have one in the works, and it's called The No Logic Zone. And what the no logic zone is it pulls from a course of over the course of my career and life, and my interaction and observations of people in various leadership positions. And I'm not talking about the politician types and the corporate leaders. People write about those people all the time. I'm talking about just like on the managerial level, the frontline supervisor level, who just did stupid stuff. And so and then kind of analyzing those really bad decisions and how it could have been so much better. So everything from there was a cruise director when my wife and I were on a cruise, and he had a staff that were the activity staff. Those are the kids that they come from all around the world. They're young, they're energetic, and they're trying to get people into doing trivia games and playing bingo and uh, volleyball in the pool and all these different kinds of activities. And these kids worked their butts off and did a fabulous job. And I saw the cruise director, and I said to him, I say, by the way, I just want to let you know that your staff is top notch. I mean, we've been on several cruises. These kids are particularly, they are on it. They are so good. He could have said, thank you very much. I'm really proud of them.
Yeah.
He could have said anything. But what came out of his mouth was, they could be a lot better.
Oh, jeez.
And he basically threw them under the bus and even complained a little bit about them to a guest, to a customer. You don't do that.
No.
You don't do that. So these are the kinds of interactions that I've seen, and everything from, all these different people that I've been so fortunate to meet in life, and everything from, like I said, Jimmy Carter, I worked for governor of Maryland. I worked for Peter Tork from the Monkees. Um,
That's right. I remember that now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I've met some really wonderful people and learned some really, really wonderful lessons, and those are the lessons that I wanted to try to share with folks.
You know what I found in the times that I've been interviewing people, and I've interviewed a lot of people, is that even people who claim to not be superstars or they aren't acclaimed and people might not know who they are. I interviewed a gentleman. His name is MacDonald. He's from the British or the Scottish Highlands,
Scotland. Hmm.
and we were talking, and I said, so how close is where you live to where they shot Braveheart with Mel Gibson? And he said, oh, it's just right down the road, and so I said, really? He said, oh yeah, Mel used to come in. He had a smoke shop and he smoked salmon and different things. And he said, Mel used to come in all the time and we had a great conversation, he and I, just sitting there shooting the breeze about stuff. And I never would have found that out had I not asked about Braveheart, because in his mind, it was no big deal.
Right.
And
Right.
so then I said, well, how close are you to, because Paul McCartney, when he left London in 1969, he and Linda moved to Scotland. And he said, oh, their place is right down the street down here. And I said, really? You live around where Paul McCartney is? And he said, oh yeah, but I met him and Asher in London at a pub in 1967 or something like that. But those sorts of nuggets,
Yeah.
I never would have known any of that. And so we spent some time talking about McCartney and Mel Gibson and a bunch of stuff and kilts. Did you know? Have you ever worn a kilt?
I have.
Oh.
I swore I was not. But when I worked at the Renaissance Festival, they have a Scottish weekend, and I said, I am not wearing a kilt. It's bad enough you got me in velvet purple tights, but I'm not doing a kilt. And my friends convinced me that I needed to wear a kilt, and so I wore a kilt once.
What he was telling me was, because there are functionality behind kilts, and he said in the wintertime they keep you warm, in the summertime they keep you cool. And I said, well, do you wear, like, if it's cold, do you wear like long stockings? And he said, we're Scottish, man, we don't do things like that. and he said, as a matter of fact, when the military guys, because they all wear kilts, the Scottish military, when they leave to go on leave, there is a mirror on the floor and a gentleman who is stationed there to make sure that they are equipped properly, which means no underwear.
Commando style.
It's like, that's the one job I would not. I was the guy making sure that nobody was wearing any pants when I was in the military, so, but you learn so much from people that you don't expect these stories to come out. Yeah, that's why you have to write your book.
I will be. I'm hoping that that we can get the No Logic Zone out later this year, and then there'll be some other stories too. There's so many stories.
When you get that out, you're going to have to come back. I thoroughly enjoy our conversations.
I love chatting with you, Kevin. It's great.
you're just a lot of fun, and you've got so much in here that you are able to impart to other folks that can make them better presenters, better leaders, because communication is a key to being a good leader. If you can't talk to people well, they're not going to follow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the thing is, you have to understand that all people want to do is know that they matter.
That's so true.
We tend to make assumptions about other people all the time. And everybody just really wants to make sure that whatever they're doing makes a difference. Why should I do this if it's not making a difference? Right? They just want to matter. Well, when they're being held back, when they're being micromanaged, they're not, like your opinion is not necessary because this is the way I want it done. All of that kind of stuff, it destroys motivation. It destroys people's self-esteem. And you don't wind up with a good product at the end of the road. You're going to kill innovation if you don't treat people with respect and dignity. You've heard me say this before. The key things that we need to have between us are trust, opportunity, respect, communication, and humanity. And that's the torch that lights that inner motivational fire in people. If I'm trusted, if I feel that you're giving me the opportunity to prove myself, or the same opportunity you've given others, if you're respecting me as an individual, if you're communicating with me openly and honestly, and you're treating me like a fellow human being, I am going to work my butt off. I'm going to do those things that are going to be positive, or I'm going to try to innovate. I'm going to try to improve. I'm going to make things better. And I'm going to give you my all. And the same thing, if I treat other people that way, then they're going to also, bring out that innovation in them. That's what we want. That's what we want with people. We want people to realize that every individual matters on this planet. Every single individual. And everybody has something to offer. They may be in a predicament in their life, or a time in their life when they're really, really down. They just need a hand up and the opportunity to prove themselves.
And, employers they're getting better, but it's a bunch of people who do not recognize that exactly what you just said. If you respect people, if you give them the opportunity to work hard and to innovate and to do that, to be part of the team, to be team leaders and to really grow through stuff and to communicate. If you don't provide that, your turnover rates go up, because your dissatisfaction rates go up, your productivity. Now, for those of you business guys, productivity is how much work you can get out of every hour from every employee. That goes down.
Yeah,
because they don't give a crap anymore, and so they're just doing it. Then it becomes the common denominator of how much can I get away with without losing this job, rather than to do the best job I can because you care for me and I care back. So many employers don't get that, but I'm hoping that it's changing now.
They hire people, they go through a huge screening process to make sure somebody's got the skills and the abilities to do this job, right? They finally bring that person on board, and then they micromanage them. So why did you need somebody with skills? You can get somebody else. You can train a monkey to do that. But the real key is, no matter what business you're in the people business.
Yes.
No matter what it is that you're doing, you're in the people business. And so, you're talking about industry, you're talking about any kind of a work product, but even think about it in a restaurant. If you treat your employees like crap, they're going to treat your customers like crap. There's nothing worse than, than wait staff that is disgruntled or having a bad day. Because then they don't treat the customers with respect. There's no smile there. There's no feeling of greeting. They'll mess up orders. There'll be all kinds of things, and then you'll lose customers. So if you remember that your people are responsible for producing your product, but they're also the face of your organization to your customer base, no matter what that customer base is. And so you got to treat them right.
I was in the restaurant business for 20 years, and was a general manager of several properties of 75 people and that kind of stuff. I would have a meeting and I would say, okay, I want you to tell me who are the most important people in this building right now. And they would look and they'd say, well, sir, you certainly are. You're the assistants. It's not the chef. I said there are two classifications of people that are the most important to what we do here. Number one is the dishwasher. If you don't have clean dishes, then you can't serve the food well, and it's not going to work. The other one is the hostesses. They give the first impression. And if they are in a surly mood, then the people are going to come to your table and they're going to be in a surly mood because of that bitch at the front desk. Yeah. And so consequently, they're important. And then everything flows off of that. And then every person that you come in contact with is your most important person that you're going to talk to that day. And after a while, they got used to my craziness.
And you remember, obviously, coming up in the era where the customer comes first, right? Everything is all customer focused. There was a great book that came out, I'm trying to remember when, probably the 80s, maybe 90s, called The Customer Comes Second. And the premise behind this book is something I really took, it was always taken to heart too. But the most important people are your staff. Because if your staff are who are dealing with your customers, and if you treat your staff well, they'll treat your customers well, right? If you don't take care of your staff, they will take your customers.
I had them trained to the point where if somebody was complaining about their food, it was a Mexican restaurant. If somebody said, this isn't really what I ordered, they were instructed to get that dish out of their face as quickly as possible and get them what they want. No questions asked. We'll deal with everything else later. But and the wait staff loved that because then they could be a hero.
Yes.
Rather than having to defend, the chef was a little tired or whatever, and the food it was in the window a long time, it's cold, and then rather than do that, they could get rid of it, replace it. Let me know. I'll go by the table and we'll make sure that they're okay. And you'll save your tip, and we'll save the customer for next time.
Yep.
That's also important. By the way, we've been talking with John. I could talk to you for hours. John Verrico. Go to his website, please. johnverrico.com. Hire him as a keynote speaker. He would be phenomenal to be in your organization. He's a very smart guy. And John, I want to thank you so much for being here. And anything you'd like to add before we go?
Kevin, I just want to thank you so much for having me on Positive Talk Radio. I love talking to you. I love the concept of your show. I will be referring other guests, I think, that you will love as well. I've some wonderful colleagues that I've had the absolute pleasure to work with over the years, and I look forward to coming back. And like you said, we can chat for hours. Just I don't feel like I'm being interviewed. I feel like I'm talking with a friend. So thank you so much, Kevin.
Ditto. I appreciate you, and I always leave these shows and consider you and the people I interview as good friends. And I would love to share a beer with you if you weren't on the East Coast.
Well, I may get to the West Coast at some point.
And by the way, this is gonna air before January 31st, and that is your last day.
Is my last official day on the roster for my government job. Yes, I've retired after 42 years, and at the time of this taping, I'm on leave. But my official retirement date will be the 31st of January, and then I'll be able to focus more of my energy full time on Share Your Fire and be able to do more keynotes, more training workshops, more individual coaching. So if anybody wants to connect with me, please do. The website, I'm on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, the site formerly known as Twitter, Instagram. You can find me pretty much anywhere out there. But please do connect. And my email, john@johnverrico.com. How easy can you get?
Everything's lined up and it's perfect. And you're going to have, I believe fully that you're not retiring. You're just transitioning to another career.
I'm just expanding what I've been passionate about on the side and making that my full-time venture.
Congratulations. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kevin.
And we're right there. I'll be right back. Hey, thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of positivetalkradio.net. Please visit our website, oddly named positivetalkradio.net, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to one another because each other's